The first sound Ada heard every morning was the rumble of the generator. It was Lagos. The generator was the city's heartbeat, a noisy promise that the day had begun. She blinked, the smell of dry grains and dried fish filling her nose. This was her world. Ada was an orphan. She had no memory of a mother or a father, no village to call her own. Her entire life was this small, cluttered provision shop in Surulere. It was more than her job, it was her home. She uncurled her body from the thin mat in the back corner, next to the tall bags of rice. This mat, a single plastic cup, and one metal plate were all she owned. She folded her wrapper neatly and placed it on top of her small bag of clothes. She was grateful. "Thank you, God," she whispered, a ritual she never missed. "Thank for the roof. Thank you for the job." Her boss, Mr. Oho, a tired man with kind eyes, was already unlocking the front grate. "Ada, you are up." "Good." "Yes, sir." "Good morning, sir." She took her plastic cup and went to the tap outside, splashing her face with water. She looked at her reflection in a cracked piece of mirror hanging on the wall. She was quiet but hard-working. That was what Mr. Oho told people. One bright morning, Ada sat on her mat, eating a small bowl of gari soaked in water. Mr. Oho had just opened, and the air was already thick with humidity. A car horn blared, loud and impatient, right outside the shop. A moment later, a woman walked in. She was not one of their usual customers. This woman wore bright yellow lace, the kind Ada had only seen in wedding magazines. Gold chains hung from her neck, and her sunglasses were pushed on top of her head. Ada quickly wiped her hands on her faded dress. She stood up, grabbing a cup of water from the drum to wash her face properly before starting her work. She moved toward the back room, her eyes on the floor. She did not see the woman step sideways to inspect a shelf of tinned tomatoes. They collided. The plastic cup flew from Ada's hand. The water splashed all over the bright yellow lace. Time stopped. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water onto the concrete floor. "Hey!" The woman's voice was a sharp crack like a whip. "Are you blind?" Ada's heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at the dark, wet stain spreading across the expensive fabric. "Ah, sorry, Ma. I'm so sorry." Ada's voice was a tiny squeak. "I didn't see you. Please, Ma, let me clean it." She reached out, her hand trembling, wanting to fix it, to wipe the water away. "Don't touch me," the woman shrieked, batting her hand away. "Don't you dare touch me with your dirty hands." She stepped back, looking down at her dress in horror. "Do you know how expensive this is? You, this dirty, useless girl." Ada lowered her head, her cheeks burning. "I'm very sorry, Ma. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" the woman barked, her voice rising. The other customers in the shop were silent, watching. "Is this how you people work here? No manners, no training, just animals." Before Ada could whisper another apology, the woman stormed past her. She pushed open the flimsy curtain to Mr. Oho's small office and went inside. Ada stood frozen, her hands clenched at her sides. She could hear every word. "Fire her?" The woman's shout was so loud it made the tins of evaporated milk on the shelf rattle. Ada flinched. She could not move. She could only listen. "Madam, please." Mr. Oho's voice was low, trying to calm her. "She is a good girl. It was just a small mistake. Water will dry." "Water will dry? Are you mad?" the woman screamed. "This is silk lace. It will stain. I am taking my business elsewhere. I cannot deal with this kind of carelessness." "Madam, please." "And I will tell my fiancé to take his business elsewhere too." "Do you know who my fiancé is?" "He is Mr. Emeka. He owns the new building site on Allen Avenue. He gives you all his contracts for the workers' supplies. Do you want to lose that?" There was a heavy silence. Ada felt the blood drain from her face. Mr. Emeka. She helped pack those supplies every week, dozens of bags of rice, gari, and beans. It was the shop's biggest contract. The office curtain was pushed aside. Mr. Oho came out, his shoulders slumped. He would not look at her. "Ada," he said. His voice was soft, full of pity. "Sir, please," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean to. It was an accident. I will work for free for 1 month, sir. Please." "Ada," he cut her off gently. He looked at her and she saw the defeat in his eyes. "You have been a good worker. You know I like you. But I cannot afford to lose that customer. I cannot afford to lose Mr. Emeka. Ada dropped to her knees. The hard concrete was cool beneath her skin. Ah, sir, please, please don't do this. I have nowhere to go. This is my home. This is where I live, where I eat. Please, sir, don't send me away. I am sorry, Ada, he said, shaking his head. My hands are tied. You have to leave. The woman, Kioma, stood in the office doorway. She was smirking, her arms crossed over her chest. That will teach you to watch where you are going, she said. She adjusted her sunglasses, stepped over Ada's kneeling form, and walked out of the shop. Ada stayed on the floor, tears streaming down her face. Her world, the small, safe world she had built on a thin mat, had just crumbled. Mr. Oho looked away. Pack your things, he said, his voice thick. Sir, pack your things and go, Ada, before she comes back. Numbly, she got to her feet. She went to the corner, her corner, and pulled out her small Ghana must-go bag. It did not take long. She had her spare wrapper, 2 old dresses, her plastic cup, and her metal plate. She zipped the bag. She looked at Mr. Oho one last time. He pressed a few naira notes into her hand. I am sorry, he whispered. Ada nodded, unable to speak. She walked out of the only home she had ever known. The Lagos street hit her like a physical blow. The roar of Danfo buses, the shouts of conductors, the smell of roasted plantain and exhaust fumes. She stood on the broken pavement, a small invisible girl clutching a bag. The sun was setting, the sky was turning a dirty orange. Where would she go? How would she survive? The day was just beginning, but for Ada, it already felt like the end. Ada walked. She walked without direction, letting the flow of people carry her along the crowded pavements of Lagos. Horns blared, music spilled from beer parlors. People pushed past her, their faces set in the determined mask of the city. She was invisible. Darkness fell quickly, as it does in the tropics. The streetlights flickered on, casting pools of yellow light, but there were long stretches of shadow in between. Fear, cold and sharp, began to creep into her heart. A group of men sitting by the roadside watched her as she passed. One of them called out something she did not understand. She lowered her head and walked faster. She had no family, no friends. The few Naira notes from Mr. Oho were folded tightly in her hand, but she knew they would not last. She turned off the main road into a quieter, darker street. And then she saw it. It was an uncompleted building, a common sight in Lagos. A skeleton of concrete pillars and floors, rising 3 stories high, abandoned by its owner. The walls were high, but the spaces for doors and windows were just empty, black rectangles. It was not safe. She knew that. But the street was less safe. She slipped through a gap where a gate should have been. The air inside was cool and damp. She climbed a rough concrete staircase to the first floor, away from the street. In a corner she found a flat surface of cement blocks. Ada laid her bag on the cold floor and sat down. The sounds of the city were muffled here. She could hear the chirping of crickets and the distant rumble of traffic. She hugged her knees to her chest. God, please help me, she whispered into the darkness. I have nowhere to go. Please. She lay on the hard floor, using her wrapper as a thin blanket. The night was long and cold. She did not sleep. She just lay awake, her mind empty of thought, listening to the strange sounds of the empty building, her body tense with fear. The sound of voices woke her. Ada sat up, her heart pounding. The sun was streaming in through the empty window frames. A group of men, holding tools and wearing helmets, were walking onto the site. They stopped when they saw her. Hey, who are you? One of the men asked. His tone was firm, but not unkind. What are you doing here? Ada scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking. Please, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass. Her voice was hoarse. I lost my job. I have nowhere to sleep. The men exchanged glances. Some shook their heads. Please, she said, desperation making her bold. I am looking for work. I can work. Let me help with the construction. I will do anything. I can carry water. I can mix cement. Please, sir. One of the men laughed. This is not a job for a woman. It is hard work. I can do it, sir, Ada said, her voice firm. I am strong. Please, just give me a chance. The men hesitated, whispering among themselves. Nah, this girl get power one said. Wheretin we go tell Ogre? Said another. Finally, the first man spoke. You have to talk to the boss, the engineer. He will be here soon. Ada nodded, relief washing over her. Thank you, sir. I will wait. She sat quietly in her corner, out of the way, watching as the workers began their tasks. The sharp smell of cement filled the air. The sound of hammers echoed. About an hour later, a tall man in a white shirt and safety boots walked in. His face was strict, and he looked like someone who did not take nonsense. The workers gathered around him, and Ada saw them pointing at her, explaining. The man walked up to her. His eyes scanned her from head to toe. So you want to work here? He asked, his voice deep. Yes, sir, Ada said, standing straight. I have no place to go, and I need to survive. I will do my best, sir. I promise. The man raised an eyebrow. This is not a place for playing. This is a building site. If you cannot handle it, you will leave. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I understand. He looked at her for a long, silent moment. All right, he said with a sharp nod. You can start tomorrow. Ada's face lit up. Thank you, sir. God bless you, sir. Thank you. As the workers returned to their tasks, Ada sat back in her corner, tears streaming down her face. This time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. Ada started the next morning before the sun was fully up. The work was harder than anything she had ever known. The Lagos sun was a physical weight, pressing down on her as she carried heavy blocks on her head, her neck muscles screaming in protest. She fetched water in large buckets, her arms aching. She mixed cement with sand, the shovel feeling impossibly heavy. Her thin slippers were useless on the rough ground. Her hands, used to measuring grains and stacking tins, were raw and blistered by the end of the first day. But she did not stop. She did not complain. She just worked, her face set in a mask of determination. The male workers watched her with surprise. Ah, this small girl is really strong, one of them said during their lunch break. Another laughed, taking a bite of his bread. Honestly, she is even working better than some of these new boys. Ada ignored their comments. She sat apart, eating the small portion of rice she had bought with Mr. Oho's money. She knew she had no choice. This was her second chance, and she could not afford to mess it up. She saved her wages carefully, sleeping in her corner of the uncompleted building, washing at the site's tap. A week passed. Her body ached, but her spirit was strong. One afternoon, a black dust-covered SUV pulled up to the site. A man got out. He was not the engineer. This man wore a sharp suit, though he had rolled up his sleeves. He had a calm but commanding presence. He was the owner. Mr. Emeka walked around the site, inspecting the work, speaking quietly to the engineer. As he turned a corner, he noticed something unusual. In the corner of the site, a young girl was carrying a headpan of mixed cement. Her clothes were stained, and sweat dripped down her face, but she moved with a steady, determined pace. She did not stop. Mr. Emeka stopped. He watched her for a full minute. "Who is that girl?" he asked the engineer, his voice low. The engineer hesitated. "Ah, sir, her name is Ada. She has been working with us for about a week now." "Why is she doing this kind of work?" Mr. Emeka said, frowning. "This is not work for a young girl." The engineer quickly explained. He told Mr. Emeka how they had found her sleeping on the site, how she had nowhere to go and had begged for a job. "She is very hard-working, sir. She doesn't complain, and she gets the job done." Mr. Emeka shook his head. "This is not right. Call her here." The engineer nodded and waved Ada over. "Ada, Oga wants to see you." Ada's heart jumped into her throat. She quickly set down the headpan, wiped her face with the edge of her wrapper, and walked over, her legs trembling. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, bowing her head slightly. "Good afternoon," Mr. Emeka said. His voice was kind but firm. "What is your name?" "Ada, sir." "Ada, why are you doing this kind of work? Don't you know it's dangerous? It is too hard for someone like you." Ada looked down at her dusty feet. "Sir, I have no other choice," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I need to survive. Please, sir, don't send me away. I will do anything to keep this job." Mr. Emeka sighed, a deep, troubled sound. He looked at her blistered hands. "This is not the kind of life a young girl like you should be living. You cannot continue here." Ada's heart sank. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Tears filled her eyes. "Not again, please, not again." "I will speak to the engineer," Mr. Emeka said. "You have to stop this work. It is for your own good." He turned and walked away, leaving Ada standing in the hot sun, her world collapsing for the second time. The sun was setting, painting the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple. But Ada felt nothing but cold. The engineer walked over to her, his face heavy with regret. "Ada," he began, and she already knew. "He said I have to leave," she whispered, her voice flat. The engineer nodded, avoiding her eyes. "Mr. Emeka said you can't continue working here. He said it's for your own good. You are too young to be carrying this kind of load." "Sir, please," she begged, the tears finally spilling over. "I have nowhere to go. I will work harder, I promise. I don't even mind sleeping here. Nobody will know." "It is not my decision," the engineer said, shaking his head. "He is the big boss. You have to leave. I am sorry." He pressed her week's wages into her hand. "You know what they say. Every disappointment is a blessing. I believe God will grant you a better opportunity." A blessing. It did not feel like a blessing. It felt like a curse. Tears blurred her vision as she went to her corner and packed her small bag. The other workers watched her, their faces full of pity, but no one said a word. She had been one of them. Now she was an outcast again. She walked away from the building site, the shouts of the workers fading behind her. The city noise swallowed her up. That night, she found another uncompleted building. This one was larger, darker, and smelled of urine. She hid on the second floor, behind a pile of sand, shivering in the night air. She hugged herself, her small bag clutched to her chest. "God, why me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "What did I do to deserve this? Why do you keep sending me away?" No answer came. There was only the sound of mosquitoes whining in her ear and the distant, lonely howl of a dog. Meanwhile, Mr. Emeka drove his SUV through the Lagos traffic. He was on his way to the provision shop, the one his company used for all their site contracts. He needed to speak to the owner about a new order. His mind was on the girl, Ada. Something about her haunted him, her thin frame, her blistered hands, her quiet dignity. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had done the wrong thing, even if it was for her own good. He pulled up to Mr. Oho's shop. The owner greeted him warmly. "Ah, Mr. Emeka. Good evening, sir. Welcome. A rare honor." "Good evening, Mr. Oho," Emeka replied. While he discussed the order for rice and beans, he glanced around the small, cluttered shop. His thoughts drifted back to Ada. He felt a deep, nagging guilt. "Excuse me," he said to Mr. Oho. "I am looking for someone. A young girl. I think her name is Ada. She used to work for you?" Mr. Oho's cheerful expression vanished. "Ada? Ah, yes, sir." He hesitated. "She had a problem with one of our customers." "A problem?" Emeka asked. "Yes, sir. The woman was very unhappy. She demanded I sack Ada. She said she was your fiancée, Madame Chioma." Emeka blinked. He felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. "Chioma, my fiancée? Are you sure?" "Yes, sir," Mr. Oho said, looking nervous. She was very upset. Ada accidentally spilled water on her clothes. "Madame Chioma, she even threatened to stop you from buying your supplies here if I didn't fire the girl." Emeka was quiet for a long, terrible moment. He remembered Chioma complaining weeks ago about some useless girl at a shop, but he had dismissed it as her usual drama. He had fired Ada from the construction site, believing he was saving her. But he had only been finishing the job his own fiancée had started. He had made her homeless. "Do you know where Ada is now?" he asked, his voice tight. Mr. Oho shook his head. "No idea, sir. She just left. I don't think she had anywhere to go." Emeka thanked the owner, finished his business, and walked out. His mind was troubled. He got into his car, but he didn't start the engine. He thought of the girl with the blistered hands, surviving on a dangerous building site, all because of a spilled cup of water. He felt a deep, profound sense of shame. He knew in that moment that he had to find her, no matter how long it took. For 3 days, Ada survived. She spent her small wages on bread and pure water, eating one small meal a day. She wandered the streets during the day, trying to look like she had purpose, and hid in the dark, smelly, uncompleted building at night. She was hungry, she was tired, and she was losing hope. On the third night, she was walking along a main road, her slippers barely protecting her feet from the rough ground. She wrapped her arms around herself, hoping to find some warmth. The road was busy, cars speeding past, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Suddenly, a black SUV slowed down beside her. Ada's heart leapt into her throat. She tensed, ready to run. The tinted window rolled down. Ada. She froze. She knew that voice. She squinted into the car's dark interior. It was Mr. Emeka, the man from the building site. Sir? Her voice was a shaky whisper. She was unsure if she should run or stay. Was he angry she was still wandering around? "What are you doing here at this time of night?" he asked. His voice was not angry, it was full of concern. I don't have anywhere to go, sir," she admitted quietly, staring at the ground. Emeka frowned. The guilt he had been carrying for days felt like a physical weight. "Get in the car." Ada hesitated. "Sir, I don't want to disturb you." "You are not disturbing me," he said, his voice firm. "I cannot leave you here like this. Please, get in." After a long moment, she obeyed. She opened the heavy door and climbed into the passenger seat. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of leather. It was cleaner than anywhere she had been in her entire life. As they drove, he asked her questions. His voice was gentle. She told him everything. She told him about the provision shop, about the woman in the yellow lace, and about how she had been trying to survive. She did not know, of course, that the woman was his fiancée. Emeka listened, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You are too young to be going through all this," he said, his voice thick. "You will come to my house. I will find work for you there." Ada's eyes widened. "Your house? But sir, No buts," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You need help, and I can help. Don't worry, you will be safe." Ada finally nodded, a single tear rolling down her dusty cheek. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." They drove for a long time, leaving the noisy, crowded streets of the mainland behind and crossing the third mainland bridge. They drove to Ikoyi, to a street lined with massive houses hidden behind high walls. Ada had never seen anything like it. He stopped at a huge metal gate, which slid open silently. They drove into a compound with a neatly trimmed garden and a house that looked like a palace. It was well lit, with large windows. Ada couldn't believe her eyes. As they stepped inside, the sheer size of the living room made her feel dizzy. Then a voice cut through the silence. "Who is this?" Kioma appeared from a side room. She was wearing a silk robe, and her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury when she saw Ada standing small and dirty on the marble floor. Emeka remained calm. "Her name is Ada. She will be staying here." Kioma's jaw dropped. "What?" Her voice rose, echoing in the large room. This dirty girl in my house? Are you serious, Emeka?" "Yes, I am," he replied, his voice firm. "She needs help, and I have decided to help her. That is final." Kioma threw her hands in the air. "Emeka, have you lost your mind? This is the girl from the shop. The one who ruined my dress. Do you know what people will say if they see her here?" "I don't care what people say," Emeka said, his voice steady and cold. "I know what you did, Kioma. Ada is staying. She will work here as a maid, and she will have a place to sleep." Kioma glared at Ada, who stood silently, her bag clutched to her chest, feeling like an intruder in a war. "This is not your decision alone, Emeka." Kioma shrieked. "It is now," he said. He turned to Ada, his expression softening. "She will be staying in the guest room, be the kitchen." He showed Ada to her room. It was small, but it had a real bed with clean sheets and a small window with curtains. Ada sat down slowly, her heart pounding. As she lay down that night, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The bed was soft, but the house was cold. Kioma's anger had been loud and clear. Ada knew, with a sinking feeling, that her troubles were not over. They were just beginning. Life in Emeka's house was a world away from the provision shop. Ada woke up in a real bed, not on a mat. She had her own bathroom, She was a maid, and she worked hard, cleaning the huge marble floors, dusting the endless shelves, and helping the cook in the kitchen. But from the first moment, Chioma treated her like a pest, like something she had stepped on. "Is this how you sweep?" Chioma snapped one morning, pointing to an already spotless floor. "Look at the corner. It is filthy. Are you blind as well as stupid?" "I'm sorry, Ma," Ada said quietly, grabbing the broom to sweep the clean corner again. "Sorry for yourself," Chioma hissed, walking away with a frown. It was not just the harsh words, it was the humiliation. Chioma made sure Ada felt unwelcome in every way. She refused to let her eat from the main pot. "This house is not a free-for-all," Chioma told her, her voice dripping with contempt. "If you are hungry, you will manage whatever you brought from outside." Ada, of course, had brought nothing. She often went to bed hungry, her stomach aching. One night, Emeka came home earlier than usual. He found Ada sitting by herself in the kitchen, staring at an empty plate. The cook had already gone home. "Ada, have you eaten?" he asked, loosening his tie. Ada hesitated. She did not want to cause trouble. But she could not lie. She shook her head. "No, sir." "Why not?" "There is food in this house." Ada lowered her gaze, looking at her hands. "Madam said I shouldn't eat." Emeka's eyes darkened. He said nothing, but he turned and stormed into the living room, where Chioma was scrolling through her phone, laughing at something she saw. "Why are you starving her?" he demanded. Chioma didn't even look up. "I don't know what you are talking about." "Don't pretend," Emeka said, his voice firm and low. "I am not a fool, Chioma. Ada is here to work, not to suffer. Go and serve her food. Now." Chioma finally looked up, her eyes flashing with anger. She laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "You are making this girl too comfortable, Emeka. She will climb on your head." "But fine, if that's what you want." She stood up, went to the kitchen, and angrily dished out a small portion. Moments later, she slammed a bowl in front of Ada. It was watery soup with a tiny single piece of yam. "Here," Chioma said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "enjoy your 5-star meal." Ada looked at the small portion, her hands trembling as she picked up the spoon. She could not stop the tears that welled in her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. "Thank you, Ma," she whispered, her voice breaking. Chioma smiled, a cold, mocking smile. "Eat, you dirty rat." She walked away, leaving Ada to cry silently into her meager, bitter meal. Despite the daily cruelty, Ada remained kind. She did her chores quietly and perfectly. She avoided Chioma as much as possible and always had a respectful, "Good morning, sir," for Emeka. She kept her head down, just trying to survive. One night, Emeka was working late. He had told Ada he would be home after midnight. The house was quiet. Around 1 a.m., a loud bang from the front door woke Ada. It sounded like someone had fallen against it. She sat up in her small bed, her heart racing. She heard staggering, a stumble, and then a horrible, retching sound from the living room. Ada quickly rushed out of her room. The sight in the living room made her gasp. Chioma was on her hands and knees. Her makeup was smeared all over her face, her clothes smelled strongly of alcohol, and she was vomiting on the expensive white rug. "Madam, are you okay?" Ada asked, rushing forward. Chioma just waved a weak hand and slumped onto the floor, moaning. Ada did not hesitate. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed a bucket, a mop, and a cloth. Without a word, she cleaned up the mess on the rug. Then she gently helped Chioma to her feet. "Let me take you to bed, madam," Ada said softly. Chioma was heavy and limp, leaning on Ada's small frame. It was a struggle, but Ada finally got her to the bedroom and helped her onto the bed. As she was about to pull the blanket over her, she touched Chioma's forehead. It was burning hot. "Ah, she has a fever," Ada whispered. She went back to the kitchen, brought a bowl of cold water and a small towel. She sat by Chioma's bed and began to gently dab her forehead with the cool, damp cloth. She did this for almost an hour, until Chioma's breathing seemed to even out. Suddenly, Chioma's eyes flew open. She looked at Ada, her eyes bloodshot and full of confusion, which quickly turned to anger. "What are you doing?" she shouted, her voice raspy. "Why are you touching me?" "Madam, you are not feeling well," Ada explained, still holding the wet cloth. "You have a fever. I was just trying to help you." "With your dirty hands?" Chioma yelled, pushing herself up on her elbows. "How dare you touch my skin? You think you are a doctor now?" She grabbed the bowl of cold water from the nightstand and, with all her strength, emptied it on Ada's head. The cold water drenched Ada's hair, her nightgown, her entire body. She stood there, shocked and dripping, her eyes filling with tears. I was only trying to help, she said quietly. Get out of my room, Kioma shrieked. Just then, Emeka walked into the room. He had just gotten home. He stopped, taking in the scene, the water all over the floor, Ada standing soaked and shivering, and Kioma yelling from the bed. What is going on here? Emeka asked, his voice sharp. Kioma immediately pointed a shaking finger at Ada. Emeka, she thinks she can just touch me, with her filthy hands. Emeka looked from Kioma's drunken, angry face to Ada's dripping, tear-streaked one. He looked at the bowl on the floor and the damp cloth. He understood instantly. He turned to Kioma, his voice low and dangerous. Do you even hear yourself? You came back home like this, drunk and sick. This girl cleaned up your mess. She was taking care of you. And instead of thanking her, you insult her. You pour water on her. How can you be so heartless, Kioma? Kioma tried to say something, but Emeka cut her off. Enough. I don't want to hear anything from you. He walked over to Ada and gently took her arm. Come with me, he said. He led her to the living room, handed her a clean towel from a cupboard, and sat next to her on the sofa. Don't let her words hurt you, Emeka said kindly, his voice soft now. You have a good heart, Ada. You didn't deserve that. Ada wiped her tears, shivering. I was only trying to help, sir. I didn't mean to make her angry. Emeka looked at her, and a small, sad smile touched his lips. You did nothing wrong. You are better than her in so many ways. As they sat there in the quiet sleeping house, something warm and unspoken passed between them. Emeka could not stop thinking about her kindness, and Ada, for the first time since arriving, felt safe. It was a moment neither of them would forget. Emeka had always been a busy man, focused on his business. He rarely paid attention to the small details of his home. But lately, something had changed. He found himself noticing Ada. He noticed how every evening when he came home tired, she would meet him at the door with a small, shy smile. Welcome, sir. How was your day? She would ask gently. At first, he had given short answers. It was fine, or busy as usual. But her genuine interest made him pause. One evening, he found himself admitting, it was stressful, honestly. Too many meetings. Ada nodded with understanding. Sorry, sir. You have been working hard. Would you like me to make you some tea? He blinked. It was such a simple, kind gesture. Kioma never asked about his day. She only asked for money for new shoes, new bags, or a new party. Yes, please, Ada, he said, touched. That would be nice. As she disappeared into the kitchen, Emeka couldn't help but compare. Ada was always calm, always respectful, even when Kioma was harsh. She moved through the house with a quiet lightness that made it feel warmer, even with Kioma's constant loud complaints. He started noticing more. He noticed how she quietly tidied his study without being asked. He noticed how she greeted the security guard with a smile. One evening, as Kioma complained loudly about the caterer for her upcoming birthday party, Emeka found himself tuning her out. He glanced at Ada, who was quietly dusting a bookshelf in the corner. He frowned, realizing he was comparing the two women, and Kioma was coming up short. He decided to do something thoughtful. After work one day, he stopped at a boutique in Lekki. He picked out an expensive silk dress for Kioma, and then he saw a simple, beautiful dress in a deep blue cotton. It was modest and lovely. He bought it for Ada. When he got home, he handed the bags to each of them. Kioma grabbed hers. What's this? She asked, frowning at the bag. A little something for you, he replied. She pulled out the silk dress, barely looked at it, and tossed it on the couch. Thanks, I guess. Did you transfer the money I asked for? Ada, on the other hand, stared at the bag Emeka held out to her, her eyes wide with disbelief. For me, sir? Yes, Ada. Open it, he encouraged, smiling. With trembling hands, she pulled out the simple blue dress. She clutched it to her chest, and her eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir, she said, her voice shaking. Nobody has ever given me a gift before. Emeka smiled, his heart aching a little. You deserve it, Ada. You have been working so hard. Kioma, who had been watching from the corner, suddenly exploded. "What is all this nonsense?" she yelled, jumping to her feet. "Why are you buying gifts for her? Are you trying to embarrass me in my own house, buying a dress for the maid?" Emeka turned to her, his patience gone. "Kioma, it is just a dress. Why are you making it a big deal?" Kioma scoffed, her eyes wild with jealousy. "A dress? Right. I can see what is going on here. You are beginning to favor her over me, right? Be careful, Emeka. Be very careful." Ada stepped back, clutching the dress tightly, her happy moment shattered. "I'm sorry, Ma. I'm sorry if I caused any problem," she said softly. "Keep quiet," Kioma snapped, pointing a shaking finger at her. "You think you are smart, eh? You think you can come here and seduce my man with your poor me act? I am watching you." Emeka sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Kioma, stop this drama. Ada is part of this household, and I will treat her with respect. If you cannot handle that, maybe you should rethink your attitude." Kioma screamed in frustration and stormed off, slamming her bedroom door so hard the walls shook. Ada stood frozen, the beautiful blue dress clutched in her hands, tears of joy now mixed with tears of fear. The next morning, as soon as Emeka left for work, the house grew quiet. It was a heavy, dangerous quiet. Ada was in the kitchen, washing the breakfast dishes, when she heard Kioma's footsteps. She tensed, her back to the door. "You think you can just walk in here and take my man away from me?" Kioma's voice was low and full of venom. Ada turned around slowly. "Madam, I—" "Shut up," Kioma shouted, her eyes filled with a pure, cold fury. "You are nothing but a dirty girl from the gutter trying to steal what doesn't belong to you." "That is not true, Ma," Ada whispered, her heart racing. "You think because he bought you one stupid, cheap dress, you are special? Well, you are not." Before Ada could respond, Kioma stormed past her and went into Ada's small room. Ada followed, her heart pounding with a terrible premonition. Kioma saw the blue dress, which Ada had carefully hung on a hook on the wall. With a cruel smile, she ripped it from the hook. "Madam, please," Ada cried, grabbing for it. Kioma pushed her hard, sending Ada stumbling back. "Don't touch me." She marched out of the room, through the kitchen, and out the back door. Ada ran after her, tears already blurring her vision. "Please, madam, don't. That dress. It means so much to me. Please." Kioma went to the small incinerator barrel at the back of the compound, where the gateman burned leaves and trash. She held the blue dress over the barrel. "Shut your mouth," Kioma interrupted. She pulled a lighter from her robe pocket. "This is what happens when you try to take what is mine." She flicked the lighter. The blue cotton caught fire instantly. Ada's eyes widened as she watched the bright orange flames consume the dress. She couldn't move. She could only watch as the one beautiful thing she had ever owned turned to black, floating ashes. "Please don't do this," she pleaded one last time, but it was already gone. Kioma was relentless. "You will never be good enough for him. I will make sure of that," she sneered. When the dress was completely burned, Kioma threw the lighter on the ground, turned and walked back into the house, leaving Ada standing there sobbing. A week later, Emeka was getting ready to leave for the building site. He saw Ada in the yard, sweeping leaves. He smiled at her. "Ada," he called, "would you like to visit the building site today? Some of your old colleagues are there. The engineer always asks about you. I am sure they will be happy to see you." Ada's face lit up for a second. She had been grateful to those workers. "Yes, sir, I would love to," she replied. "Good, go and get ready. We will leave in 5 minutes." Ada ran inside. She had to look her best, but as she stood in her room, her good mood vanished. The dress was gone. She had nothing else to wear but her old faded maid's uniform or the dress she had been wearing when she arrived. When she finally stepped out, wearing her old worn dress, Emeka's smile faded. He looked at her in surprise. "Ada? Why are you wearing that? What about the new dress I bought you?" Ada froze. Her heart dropped. She couldn't tell him the truth. Kioma was standing by the living room window, watching them. Her eyes were sharp, warning Ada not to speak. Kioma made a small, threatening gesture with her eyes. "If you tell him, I will make you regret it." Ada looked down. I am saving the new dress, sir," she said quietly, avoiding his gaze, "for a special occasion." Emeka saw the hesitation. He saw her quick, frightened glance toward the house. "Ada, what is wrong?" he asked, his voice rising slightly. "Get in the car, we are leaving." Ada stood still, unsure what to do. She was trapped between them. But Emeka was not a fool. He followed her gaze and saw Chioma standing in the window, her face a mask of hostility. In that instant, he understood. He didn't know what had happened, but he knew Chioma was the cause of her fear. "Ada," he shouted, his voice sharp, making her jump. "Get in the car, I said, now." With a sigh of relief, she obeyed. She didn't want to make things worse. She climbed into the car and sat down. As the car drove off, Ada looked back. Chioma was still staring at them, her face dark with anger. Ada didn't know what was coming next, but she knew one thing. Chioma was not going to stop. A few days later, Chioma's entire attitude changed. It was so sudden, it was terrifying. She called Ada to the living room one afternoon. "Ada, come here. Sit down, let's talk," she said, her voice calm, almost sweet. Ada was shocked. Chioma had never ever allowed her to sit on the sofa. She hesitated, but Chioma smiled and gestured to the seat. "Don't be scared. Sit." Ada perched carefully on the edge of the cushion, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. "Ada," Chioma began, her voice soft. "I know I have been hard on you. Ever since you came into this house, I have been difficult. I have said things I shouldn't have, and I have treated you badly." She looked Ada straight in the eye. "But today I want to make amends. I want to treat you like my younger sister. From now on, things will be different. Please forgive me for all my past mistakes." Ada blinked, confused but hopeful. Could this be real? "Ma, I don't hold any grudges," she said, trying to match Chioma's tone. "We are good. Thank you for letting me stay in your home." The tension in Ada's shoulders eased for the first time in months. Chioma smiled back, and there was a warmth in her eyes that Ada had never seen. "Good," Chioma said. "Can I ask you for a favor, as my new sister?" "Anything, Ma?" Ada replied, eager to keep this new peace. "I am not very good at cooking," Chioma said with a small laugh, "and Emeka is not home for lunch. Can you make some noodles for me?" "Just for me." Ada's face lit up. This was normal. This was good. "Of course, Ma, I will make it right away." She hurried to the kitchen, her heart light. She cooked the Indomie noodles just the way the cook had shown her, with a little pepper and onion. When it was ready, she put it in a nice bowl and brought it to Chioma. "Thank you, Ada," Chioma said, looking pleased as Ada set the bowl on the table in front of her. "You are welcome, Ma." Ada excused herself and went to her room, thinking that maybe, finally, everything was going to be fine. She was in her room for only a few seconds when she heard a loud shout from the living room. "Ah! What is this?" Ada's heart skipped a beat. She rushed back out. "Madam, what happened?" Chioma was standing, her face twisted in a mask of anger and fear. "So you want to poison me?" she yelled. "What did I ever do to you?" Ada's mouth fell open. "What?" "Madam, I didn't put anything in your food. Please believe me." Chioma pointed an accusing finger at her, and suddenly tears were streaming down her face. I saw you with my own 2 eyes. You put something in my food." Just then the front door opened. Emeka walked in. He stopped, confused, looking at Chioma, who was crying, and Ada, who looked horrified. "What is going on here?" he asked, his voice tense. Chioma cried louder, pointing dramatically at Ada. "Emeka, look at her. She's the one. She tried to poison me. She poisoned my food." "No." Ada stepped forward, desperate. "Sir, I swear, I didn't put anything in the food. Madam, I was just trying to help." "She's lying, Emeka," Chioma shrieked, wailing. "She wants to take my life so she can have you." Ada, desperate to prove her innocence, couldn't take it anymore. She looked at the bowl of noodles on the table. Chioma had barely touched it. Without a second thought, she grabbed the bowl. "There, you see?" she cried, her voice shaking. "There is nothing in your food. I didn't poison you." And before Emeka or Chioma could stop her, she put the spoon in her mouth and swallowed a large mouthful of the noodles. For a second, there was silence. Ada swallowed. Then a sharp, searing pain shot through her stomach. It was like fire. She doubled over, gasping. The room spun around her. "Ada!" Emeka shouted, rushing toward her as she fell to her knees, clutching her belly. What's happening? Are you okay? Ada couldn't speak. She screamed in pain, her vision blurring. I, I don't know, she cried, tears of agony streaming down her face. It hurts. It hurts. Kioma stood at the side, watching Ada writhing on the floor. Her fake tears were gone. Then a wicked, triumphant smile spread across her face. I told you, Emeka, she said, her voice chillingly calm, almost happy. I saw her with my own eyes. She poisoned the food. Emeka was in a panic. He looked at Ada, who was now lying on the floor, her breathing shallow. Ada, hold on, I am taking you to the hospital. He scooped her small, light body up in his arms and rushed out of the house, his mind racing. He looked back at Chioma, who was still smiling. He couldn't believe what was happening. What had she done? Was this all a trick? The first thing Ada knew was the soft, steady beeping of a machine. Her stomach felt sore and hollow, but the sharp, burning pain was gone. She slowly opened her eyes. The room was white and smelled of antiseptic. Emeka was sitting in a chair beside her bed, his head in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He looked up as she stirred, his face filled with worry, softened with relief. Ada, you're awake, he said, his voice shaky. Thank God. Ada tried to smile, but her lips were dry. What? What happened? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. You collapsed, he explained, his voice tight with anger, after you ate the noodles. We almost lost you. The doctor said it was poison. Rat poison. Ada closed her eyes again, remembering the pain. She remembered Kioma's smile. The tears welled up. Emeka looked at her, his eyes serious. Ada, I have to tell you something. He paused, taking a deep breath. When I took you to the hospital, I went back to the house. I was confused. Kioma was too calm, too happy. He leaned forward. I checked the living room security cameras, Ada. Kioma, she did something terrible. She set you up. Ada looked at him, her mind struggling to understand. What do you mean, sir? When you went to your room to get... I don't know. When you left the kitchen, he said, his voice growing harder, I saw her on the footage. She went to the kitchen. She took a small bottle from her pocket and poured something into the noodles. Then she went back to the living room and started shouting. Ada stared at him, stunned. Kioma had been pretending. The apology, the smile, being her sister, it was all a lie to kill her. But why? Ada whispered, the tears flowing freely now. What did I ever do to deserve this? Emeka looked down, his heart heavy with guilt. She was jealous, he said, and I let her be cruel to you. This is my fault, Ada. No, sir, she whispered. Yes, he insisted. He stood up, his face a mask of cold fury. I will make sure she pays for what she did. He left the room. Ada lay in the hospital bed, her body weak but her mind reeling. Emeka went home. He walked into the living room where Chioma was on the phone, painting her nails. Pack your things, he said. Chioma looked up, annoyed. What's going on? I'm busy. I said pack your things and leave my house, Emeka said, his voice dangerously quiet. What? You can't be serious. What about that girl? Is she... Don't pretend you don't know, he interrupted. There is a camera in this living room, Kioma, and I have seen everything. Kioma's hand froze, the nail polish brush hovering in the air. The color drained from her face. You poisoned her, he stated. You tried to kill an innocent girl in my house. If I call the police, you will spend the rest of your life in Kirikiri. So just pack your bags and leave. Now. Kioma stood up, trembling. She knew there was no way out. Ashamed, terrified, and defeated, she quietly went to her room, gathered her things, and left, her head hanging low. Days passed. Ada slowly regained her strength. When she was discharged, Emeka brought her back to the quiet, empty house. She rested in her small room. One afternoon, Emeka came to her, sitting by her side. He had a smile on his face, but his eyes were serious. Ada, he said gently, I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you. You didn't deserve any of this. You are a good person, and I want to make things right. I am just glad I am okay, sir, she replied softly. You are more than okay, he continued. I have been thinking a lot about your future. You told me once you wanted to go back to school, right? Ada nodded slowly, unsure where he was going. He smiled, and this time his eyes shone with kindness. I have already spoken to the right people at the University of Lagos. I have made sure you are enrolled for the next term. I will help you with the fees. Whatever you need, books, clothes, anything, I will be here to support you. This is your chance, Ada. Your chance to chase your dreams. Ada's eyes widened. Sir, you are serious? Of course I am, he said, his voice firm but warm. You deserve every opportunity, Ada. I believe in you. Tears filled Ada's eyes as she looked at him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, sir. You don't know how much this means to me. You don't have to thank me, Emeka said, his voice thick with emotion. You are family now, and family takes care of each other. Ada smiled, a real, genuine smile. She felt a warmth she had never felt before. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had a real future. She wasn't just surviving, she was going to live. Ada's life changed. She was no longer just a maid. She still lived in Emeka's house, but in a proper guest room upstairs. Her days were no longer filled with scrubbing floors, but with lectures and books. She enrolled at Unilag, studying business administration. At first, she was terrified. She was older than many of the other students and felt out of place. But the same determination that had seen her through the provision shop and the building site kicked in. She studied hard, her nights spent at the dining room table, her head buried in textbooks. Emeka was a quiet, constant support. He never pried, but he always made sure she had what she needed. How was school today, Ada? He would ask over dinner. It was good, sir. We learned about microeconomics. Good, that's good. The awkwardness between them slowly faded. The sir remained, a habit of respect she couldn't break, but the fear was gone. It was replaced by a comfortable, quiet companionship. She would make him tea when he came home late, just as she had before, but now they would sit in silence, she reading a textbook, he reading a report. The house was peaceful without Kioma's angry energy. It felt like a home. One evening, Emeka sat in the living room, lost in thought, watching her as she wrote in a notebook. Ada, he said, his voice quiet. Yes, sir, she replied, looking up from her work. Her simple smile and gentle voice always had a way of calming him. Come and sit, he said, patting the seat beside him. She hesitated, then closed her book and sat down, her hands clasped in her lap. He didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at her. He saw the young woman she had become. No longer the frightened girl, but a confident student. Yet her kindness, her humility, it was all still there. You have been through so much, he said, his voice soft but firm. You were thrown out. You worked until your hands bled. You were starved, humiliated, even poisoned. Yet you are always kind. You never complain. Your humility, your strength. It amazes me. Ada blinked, surprised by his words. Sir, I am just doing my best. No, it is more than that, he said, his eyes meeting hers. You have changed my life in ways I did not expect. You brought peace to this house. You showed me what a good heart looks like. He took a deep breath. And I think I have fallen in love with you, Ada. Ada's eyes widened. She was speechless. Her heart felt like it had stopped. Sir, she started, her voice trembling, you are a big man, Arik man. I am nobody. I was a maid. Don't say that, he interrupted gently. It is not about where you are coming from. It is about who you are. And you, Ada, are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. Ada looked down, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. She didn't know what to say. Love was not something she had ever thought about. Survival was all she had ever known. Take your time, Emeka said, seeing her confusion. You don't have to say anything. But I wanted you to know how I feel. He stood up and left her alone in the quiet living room. Ada sat there for a long time, her mind replaying his words. Love, it was a word that felt as strange and wonderful as the soft bed she now slept in. Months passed. Ada blossomed. Her classes at university gave her confidence. The security of Emeka's home gave her peace. She slowly healed from the inside out. She and Emeka settled into a new gentle rhythm. They talked about her dreams. She told him how she wanted to help other girls, girls like her, who had no one and nowhere to go. He listened, truly listened, and encouraged her. Her love for him grew, not with a sudden passion, but like a steady, warm light. It was built on gratitude, respect, and a deep, unspoken understanding. He was the kindest man she had ever known. He was her rescuer, her sponsor, and her best friend. One evening, a few months after she had finished her first year of school, Emika called her into the living room. This time, he was not sitting. He was standing, dressed neatly in a crisp white shirt. He looked nervous, and in his hand he held a small black velvet box. Ada's heart began to pound. "Ada," he began, and his voice was thick with emotion, "I told you how I felt, and I have watched you this past year. I have watched you grow. I have watched you heal. And my mind is made up." He opened the small box. Inside was a simple, beautiful diamond ring. "I want you to be my wife, Ada. I want you to be my partner." Ada gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Sir, are you sure?" He smiled, a gentle, loving smile. "I have never been surer about anything in my life. You are everything I have been looking for. You are kind, you are strong, and you are good." Tears filled Ada's eyes as she looked at the ring and then at his face. "But I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to live like this." "We will learn together," he said, taking her free hand. "All I need is you by my side." Ada looked at the man who had saved her, not once but 3 times. First from the street, then from his fiancée, and finally from her own past. She nodded slowly, her heart overwhelmed with a joy so deep it hurt. "Yes, sir," she whispered, the tears flowing. "I will marry you." Emika laughed, a sound of pure happiness. He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a hug. "No more sir," he whispered into her hair. "Call me Emeka." Their wedding was not a loud Lagos party. It was small and beautiful, held in the garden of their home. Only close friends, the engineer from the building site, and even Mr. Oho from the provision shop were there. Ada wore a simple white dress. She was not a maid, not an orphan, not a victim. She was a bride. As Emeka took her hand and they exchanged their vows, there was not a dry eye in the garden. It was a story of hope, of love, and of a life redeemed. Ada's life changed forever. But she did not forget where she came from. Emeka kept his promise. He supported her dreams. After she graduated from university, she did not join his company. Instead, she started a foundation. She called it the Ada Foundation. Its mission was simple: to help orphaned and underprivileged girls in Lagos, to give them a safe place to live, an education, and a chance. Emeka stood by her side, not as a billionaire owner, but as a proud partner. He provided the funding, and she provided the heart. 1 year after their wedding, Ada stood on a small stage. It was the opening day of the foundation's first home. She was poised and confident, her voice clear as she spoke to the crowd. "I know what it is like," she said, her eyes scanning the faces of the first group of young girls they were welcoming. "I know what it is like to sleep on a cold floor, to be hungry, and to feel like you are invisible. I know what it is like to be thrown out with no hope." She looked over at Emeka, who was watching her, his eyes shining with pride. "But this story teaches us that life can take unexpected turns," she continued. "No matter how tough things get, your kindness, your humility, and your hard work will always shine through. Never let anyone judge you by your situation. True worth is not about wealth or status. It is about the goodness in your heart." She smiled, a warmth spreading through the small crowd. "My journey was proof that kindness can lead to unexpected blessings. Every disappointment, every closed door, it was all leading me here. It was leading me to a future I could never have dreamed of." That evening, after the last guest had left, Ada and Emeka stood on the balcony of the new home, looking out at the Lagos skyline. "You did it," he said, taking her hand. "We did it," she replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. She thought back to her life, the mat in the corner of the provision shop, the cold cement of the uncompleted building, the watery soup of Kioma's cruelty, the ashes of her blue dress. She had come so far, from a homeless girl on the streets to the cherished wife of a kind man, and now a helper to other girls. She was not alone anymore. She had a home. She had a purpose. and she had love.